Hello, welcome to this class. Last week we looked at approximation and estimation of whole numbers, where we learned how to round and approximate numbers to the nearest tens, nearest hundreds, and to the nearest thousands. Today we are moving forward still in approximation and estimation, but now we are going to be considering how to approximate and estimate decimal numbers. We said that a decimal number is a number that has a decimal point. So if I have this number 2.5, 2.5 becomes a decimal number. And remember, we said that a decimal number has two parts or three parts. As the first part, which are the numbers at the left-hand side of the decimal number, is known as the whole number part. They are known as the whole numbers, right? Then the number after the decimal point, which is the right-hand side of the decimal number, is known as the decimal values. Is known as the decimal values of the decimal number. Then the point itself is called the decimal. It's called the decimal point. Okay? Now, these are the different parts of the decimal number, the decimal point, the whole number part, which are the numbers at the left-hand side of the decimal number. The right-hand side of the decimal numbers contains the decimal values, and this is a decimal number. Now, in approximating decimal numbers, we can approximate decimal numbers to the nearest whole number, 1. 2, we can approximate decimal numbers to the nearest or to one decimal place. We can approximate decimal numbers to 2 decimal places. We can approximate to 3 decimal places, 4 decimal places, and so on and so forth. Okay? When we round decimal numbers to whole numbers, what it simply means is that we are going to eliminate the decimal point and the decimal values. But how do we eliminate that? We still consider the digits. Okay? Remember I said in approximation and estimation of numbers, we consider the unit numbers, which we grouped into 2 groups, Group A and Group B, where the members of Group A are 1, 2, 3, and 4, and members of Group B are 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we said that when the number in consideration is in Group A, we round down. It simply turns into 0 and other numbers remains the same. When the number is in Group B, we round up by making the number considered 0 and adding 1 to the place value at which we are rounding to. Okay? Now, that's still the same technique and the same method of rounding decimal numbers. The only thing then is that, let's take, for example, this 2.5. If I want to approximate to the nearest whole number, first, we know that this decimal number has only one decimal value, which is 5. Okay? So we can now say that 2.5, the decimal places here is just 1, because it has only one decimal value. Assuming I have this to be 2.5349, now the decimal values are 1, 2, 3, 4 in number, so I can say that this particular number has 4 decimal places. If I add 1, it becomes 5 decimal places. If I add 0, remember, this 0 is insignificant because it doesn't change anything. Okay? But if I now add 1 after this 0, it becomes significant. So I can now say that this number has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 decimal places. Now, if I want to round the number 2.5 to a whole number, if I want to round it to the nearest whole number, I'll simply consider the number after the decimal point. The number immediately after the decimal point is going to be considered. So I can put my dash at the decimal point, then consider the number here. Group A, Group B. 5 is in Group B, meaning we round up. What does it now mean? Here will become what? 1, here will become 0. So you now notice that this will now be 3.0. But since we are talking about the nearest whole number, we can now decide to ignore the point 0 because it means no. Okay? Meaning that 2.5 to the nearest whole number is 3. Okay? Good. Okay. Having said all this, let's solve some examples to help us understand more about rounding whole numbers to the nearest, rounding decimal numbers to the nearest whole number, rounding decimal numbers to 1 decimal place, rounding decimal numbers to 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, and we stop at 4 decimal places, which you know it continues like that. Okay? So let's look at example number 1. Examples? One, round, okay, round to the nearest whole number. Round to the nearest whole number. A. Let's say here I have 23.491. Okay? 23.491. Solution. So we have 23.491. If I want to round this number to the nearest whole number, depending on, no matter how big the number is, our point of concentration is simply at the number that is immediately after the decimal point. So we can simply have a straight line to count it as if we are cancelling out the decimal point. Then we consider the digit immediately after the decimal point. So I'm now using this line to form as if I'm separating the whole number part and the decimal values. Remember, this is the decimal value part. This is the whole number. So using this straight line, I am separating the whole numbers from the decimal values. But am I going to consider all these digits? No. The digit to be considered is the digit that is immediately after this decimal point. When we learn the place value of decimal numbers, this is the 10th place value, this is the 100th place value, this is 1000th place value. Meaning that we are considering the value at the 10th place value to round decimal values to the nearest whole number. Now, having considered 4, meaning that here and here will be 0, 4 is in what group? Group A, Group B. Group A, it becomes 0, and here remains the same. Remember, there's a decimal point here. But due to the fact that our interest is to make this decimal number a whole number, this 0.000 becomes insignificant. So therefore, I can decide to remove it totally. What does this now tell us? This now tells us that 23.491 to the nearest whole number is what? 23. Okay? Let's look at example number 2. Example B. Round, let's say here I have 4,321.673. 4,321.673 rounded to the nearest whole number. Okay? Same thing, solution. We have 4,321.673. I will use my straight line to separate the whole number part and the decimal values. And what digit are we to consider here? 6. Automatically here becomes 0, here becomes 0. 6 is in what group? Group A, Group B. Group B. Therefore, we add 1 here, and here becomes 0. Bring down your decimal point. 1 plus 1, 2. 2, 3, 4 remains the same. Since this is 0.000, this part is what now? Insignificant. They are not significant, meaning that our answer is simply 4,222. Is that okay? So 4,321.673 to the nearest whole number is what? 4,322. 4,322. Okay, let's solve one more or two more examples. Let's say here I have 59.7. 59.7. We want to round 59.7 to the nearest whole number. Solution. 59.7. Using my stroke, I'll separate the numbers in whole numbers and decimal numbers. So we consider 7. Group A, Group B. Group B, we add 1 here. Here becomes 0. Break down your point. 1 plus 9, 10. So 0 carry 1. 1 plus 5, 6. So here we are now looking at 60.0. And since this is 60.0, this point 0 becomes insignificant. So our answer is what? 60. Meaning that 59.7 to the nearest whole number is 60. And finally, for the whole numbers, round, let's say here to be 563.29. If you watch, you notice that as I am pronouncing the decimal values, I call them digit by digit. Why? Because they are not up to 1 unit. Okay? So this is 563.29, and I want to round it to the nearest whole number. So 563.29, I'll use my stroke to separate them whole number decimal values. So I will consider 2. 9 becomes 0. Group A, Group B, Group A, here becomes 0. Here remains the same point. Now this becomes 563.00, and they become insignificant, meaning that our final answer is what? 563. Therefore, 563.29 approximated to the right, to the nearest whole number becomes 563. Okay? Let's look at example number 2. In example number 2, it says approximate to 1, let me use numbers, 1 decimal place, which is always written as 1 dp. Always written as 1 dp. So wherever you see 1 dp, it means 1 decimal place. And as I was introducing or talking about decimal numbers, I said the number of decimal values will determine the number of decimal places a decimal number has. For example, in this number, we have this to be 4,321.673. How many decimal values are here? 6, 7, and 3. Therefore, there are 3 decimal values, meaning that this particular decimal number has 3 decimal places. Okay? Now, when we want to round to 1 decimal place, it simply means that we need to reduce the number of decimal values to 1. Okay? So even if the number has 10 decimal is in 10 decimal places, we need to reduce that number to be in only 1 decimal place. And to do this, okay, let's move the board. A, let's say I have this to be 3.432. Now looking at this number, 3.432 is a decimal number of how many decimal places? 1, 2, 3, because it has 3 decimal values. Okay? Now to round this to the nearest 1 decimal place, what we simply do is that we start from the decimal point and count. Once we count, we put our stroke as usual and consider the digits after the stroke and consider the digit immediately after the stroke. Now let's go. From the decimal point we count 1, put our dash. Are you seeing it? 1, put our dash. You cannot see that 3.4 is now like one decimal place because it now has only one, right? But before we conclude our final answer, we need to consider the digit at this point. Okay? Here we become 0 automatically. Group A, Group B, Group A, here becomes 0. Bring down 4, bring down your point, bring down 3. These two zeros becomes what? Insignificant. Remember I told you that if you have this thing to be, let's say, 2.3, all these zeros are not important because they do not change anything and they do not add anything to that number. Alright? So our final answer now becomes 3.4. You now notice that 3.432, which at this point has 3 decimal values, is now having only 1 decimal value. So we can now say that we have approximated this number to 1 decimal value. From 3 decimal places to 1 decimal place. B, let's say I have 0.57123. Now looking at this number, you notice that the whole number part is 0. The decimal values are 57123. And how many decimal places is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Meaning that this one number has 5 decimal places. So we are now going to reduce it down to 1 decimal place. So let's solve. Solution. 0.57123. And remember what I said here? We start from the decimal point and count. From the decimal point, we go 1, we put our stroke and consider this number. Meaning that here becomes 0. 7 is in group what? Group A, group B, group B. So I add 1 to this place. And here will become 0. Here will become what? 1 plus 5, 6.0. Okay? Remember that these zeros becomes what? Insignificant. Therefore, my answer is 0.6. Are you following? Are you following? Alright. Example C, I can have here to be 103.2914. 2914. 103.2914 is a decimal number and it has 4 decimal places. We now want to reduce it to what? 1 decimal place. So we go solution. 103.2914. We go from the decimal point, we count 1. Put our strokes, consider 9. 1 and 4 becomes 0. 9 is in group B. We add 1 here. 9 becomes 0. 1 plus 2, 3. Bring down your point. Here remains the same. And what is now our final answer? 103.3. Okay? Good. Okay, let's look at number 3, example. It says, estimate to 2 dp. What did I tell you that dp means? Decimal place. So the question says estimate to 2 decimal places. Round to 2 decimal places. Alright? Okay. A, let's say here we have 9.173 9.17621. This is a decimal number with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimal places. To round this to 2 decimal place, same thing we did here. We have here 9.17621. We start from the decimal number. When we rounded to 1 decimal place, we counted only 1 before putting our slash. Now we will count how many numbers? 2 numbers from the decimal point. So the decimal point 1, 2 our slash, we consider the number here. Immediately here becomes 0, 0. 6 is in what group? Group B. We add 1 here. 6 becomes 0. 1 plus 7, 8. Bring down 1. Bring down point. Bring down 9. Therefore, 9.17621 rounded to nearest 2 decimal place is 9.18. You can now see that the answer here has only 2 decimal values. Alright? B. Zero point 73158. 0.73158. We want to round this number to the nearest 2 decimal place or to 2 decimal places. So solution 0.73158. From the decimal point we count 1, 2. We have our slash, we consider the digit here. 1 is in what group? Group A. Here becomes 0, here becomes 0, here becomes 0. 3, 7 remains the same. Bring down your point, bring down 0. So these zeros are what? Insignificant. Our answer is now 0.73. So therefore 0.73158 to 2 decimal places is 0.73. And finally C, let's say here we have 42.37901. 42.37901 is a decimal number whose decimal places are 5. So this number has 5 decimal places. We need to reduce it to 2 decimal places. So solution. We have 42.37901. Let's go. From the decimal number, we go 1, 2. Put our slash, we consider 9. 9 is in what group? Group A, Group B, Group B. Since 9 is in Group B, we add 1 to 7. Here becomes 0, here is 0, here is 0. 1 plus 7, 8. We bring down 3, bring down your points, bring down 2, bring down 4. Therefore, our final answer becomes 42.38. Okay? So, that is that on how to approximate decimal numbers. Now, on the examples, we can see how to round to the nearest whole number. You can see how to approximate to 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places. Even if the question asks you to approximate to 3 decimal places, you simply start from the point and count 1, 2, 3. Put your slash and consider the 4th decimal value. Then, which group is it? It will now determine what you will have as your final answer. Okay? Now, having said all this, this is the mathematics of decimal approximation. Okay? And that is that you want to know. You need to know about approximating decimal numbers. Alright? Okay? Good. Remember to go over the lesson over and over so that we'll have a clear picture of what approximating decimal values or decimal numbers is all about. Even if the question asks you to approximate to 4 decimal places, start from the decimal point, count the decimal values 1, 2, 3, 4, put your slash, then consider the fifth decimal value. If it belongs to group A or group B, then that will determine if you are rounding up or you are rounding down, and you get your answer. Having said this, watch the videos again and again, do some works, practice, solve the questions I'll be sending you so that you master our decimal approximation very well. See you in our next class.